All right, everybody. With us this week, we are joined by Gary Rogers, the founder and chief of business operations over at True North Ale, one of Massachusetts' top breweries. We're excited to have True North on the podcast, and we're excited to talk with you, Gary. So, how's everything going? And happy spring.
Yeah, I know spring is here. It's winter in our business is always a little bit slow, and with dry January and those other things that we hate from the production side of the business, and that's all behind us now. The bad weather, the dark days. So having a taste of summer last week when it hit 85 degrees, we just start seeing people coming out, and with all of the pandemic stuff seeming to be in the back. In the rearview mirror, that helped as well. So, we're looking forward to a fabulous spring and then summer right through the rest of the year.
So for those that are in audio only mode right now, Gary, got to ask you, because you're wearing the True North, is that family lacrosse club sweatshirt? We've got to learn more about that right off the jump here. There's a lacrosse club?
Yeah, we do. We sponsor a lacrosse club. We play out of Charlestown. It actually says Townies, so we're the True North Townies. And it's a over 30 and over 40 league. And for those of you who aren't on audio, you'll see that I'm well over 40. But I continue to play. I'm the oldest guy on the team. I'm probably one of the oldest guys in the league. And we play from, down in Rhode Island up into New Hampshire. And it's a competitive league, but it's a fun league. So we've been doing the sponsorship for the 30s and 40s for a number of years now. And probably the oldest guy in the league now, but still trying to play. We'll see if I can do it this year. It's another year behind me.
That's how. What position do you play?
I was a midi for most of my career until I got old, and then I had to switch to attack.
Fair enough. Hey, who knows? I mean, the PLL is always calling for some talent, so maybe the True North, your team can be the feeder town for some of the PLL.
Yeah, we can spectate and provide the beer.
I like that.
We love that. So let's start with yourself. Your early life, you were a man that wore many hats, global sales leader. You were marketing at IBM. You were in the Boston startup space. You're a fisherman. You accomplished a lot. So, all the way back then, before you went to, Dartmouth College and before you got your degree at the University of Chicago, what did you want to do when you were growing up?
Well, I wanted to be a teacher, and I actually was a teacher for a couple of years at a prep school. I was a math teacher. I enjoyed it tremendously and saw that it was going to be the same for 40 years if I'd stayed in it. And it was also, I wasn't going to make a lot of money as a teacher. So I decided after a couple of years that I'd get into the business side. As a math major in college, I liked the analytical side. Technology was just coming then. If you think about when I joined IBM, it was prior to the PC being invented. So there was a tremendous ramp of fun things that were going to be happening when I entered the business world then in technology. And that's what I stayed in until I was fortunate enough because of hitting some home runs with some companies and startups that just took off, and that I was able to retire at a fairly young age, and had a hell of a lot of fun. So 10 years of retirement where my wife and I were just traveling the world and doing great things. That changed, however, when my son got out of college and went to work in the brewing industry. Now, I'd been a home brewer since 1983. And he was born a few years later. He grew up with me homebrewing. But he decided that he would get into the brewing industry. He had great ideas about things, and he'd tell me about, they could be doing this better, or they should do that. And I said, well, you're a smart kid. Why don't you open your own brewery? Thinking that in my retirement, I'd sit there and drink a beer and watch him work. He invested nearly 2 years in really learning the operations side of the brewing business. And one day, my wife Jill and I were out with our younger son skiing in Jackson Hole, got a call. My son Jake said, hey, you've been telling me I should open my own brewery. I'm ready. I'm ready to open the brewery. So, one condition, however, you got to do it with me. And after 10 years of retirement, I felt I had some fuel in the tank and could still do it. And I said, yeah, let's go. And that's when we got started. So that was now over 6 years ago since that phone call. And we've been brewing and selling beer for 5.5 years.
So you've had some homebrew, you've had some history with brewing too. It's not like you just kind of walked into it blindly. You started home brewing in the 80s, of course. So take us through back then how you got into home brewing. You know, maybe what was your first, what was your favorite, and how how did the home brewing lead to, you know, down the road, hey, maybe when my son asked me, I actually can do this.
Well, I'll tell you that, when I was in college, I studied in Europe. I traveled all over Europe and had good beers. I had Belgian beers and German beers and Czech beers. And so I knew there was more available than what was in the market in the U.S. at the times. And, back in the early 80s, it was, before craft brewing really got going. So, if you wanted an ale, it would be a Jenny Cream ale. There really wasn't a lot that was available. I got started when we bought our first house. So I was able to put home brewing equipment, store it in the basement. And so I could get going back in '83. A buddy of mine had started a year earlier, lived up in Portland, Maine, came down, helped me to get started, figure some of the things out. So that's how things got started. The most interesting beer I think that I did was a steam beer, and sort of got a recipe that was a clone of Anchor Steam, and did that. That was one of the more interesting ones. And I did one lager, brewing the beer, lagering it under cold conditions for a number of months, and then when I opened it, it was a lager. It was what I'd been drinking for the last 10 years, and that's about all you could get was a Budweiser. So I decided that I wouldn't do lagers again. And actually, I never did brew another lager. So,
what was your first beer?
First beer was a pale ale. I did a pale that I thought it came out pretty good.
Now, was it so? We always like to ask people, especially have started from home brewing and then commercialized it. Was it good? Like, okay, my friends and family members were, yeah, this is a pale ale, this is nice, or was it okay? I know what I'm doing, type of thing, and let's continue this process.
Well, in '83, nobody had anything to compare it to. It was just the mass-produced lagers that everybody was drinking. So whatever I was making was new and different. But fast forward a number of years until we were in the midst of craft brewing. I got really into brewing again when I retired. So I had the time. I was doing a lot of brewing. My son Jake built me equipment so that I could do all grain batches and really have some more controls and some more creativity. I don't claim anything that we're doing as mine. That's our head brewer, Seth Barnum. He's the magician behind all this, and we should talk about what his credentials are, as we move through this.
Yeah, and another sort of feather in the cap for you is, obviously you're a North Shore guy. You grew up in Beverly, and the opportunity to, compete in the ALS Ales for ALS Home Brewing Competition back in 2013 too. Probably meant a lot to you getting to do that, in your home. You won. You helped out build this incredible charity as well. Can you explain that process and that cause that you were raising money for as well?
Yeah, Ales for ALS, the ALS Society Foundation, on a worldwide basis, they're located out in Washington State. They adopted craft brewing and years ago as a methodology for raising awareness and raising money for the charity, for the research work that they do. They just do a phenomenal job, and the hops growers have teamed with the foundation to offer a hops blend, and we should talk about that for the commercial brewers, but also going out for the home brewers and doing competitions all across the country and around the world. So the reason that I got involved in that is an unfortunate one. My brother-in-law has ALS. Fortunately for him, it's been a slow progression, and it's been more than 10 years since he was diagnosed. And my wife's college roommate's husband had ALS diagnosis about the same time, back in the 2012 timeframe. He was not so fortunate. He passed fairly quickly. The beer that I brewed for that competition, where I was a double IPA that I called Iron Horse, named after Lou Gehrig. Iron Horse Double-E IPA. And the double E was Ed and Eric, my brother-in-law and our friend. And it was pretty good beer. And I got to go and brew it at the Cape Ann Brewing Company in Gloucester, Massachusetts. So we did a 20-barrel batch of that. It was on tap at their tap room. It went to a number of restaurants in the area, and I was pretty happy with it. So that connection with ALS has remained, certainly because of our brother-in-law, and we continue to do ALS beers in each year. In fact, we'll have one coming up in the next month or so.
That's awesome. That's just, I mean, out of all the accomplishments you've had in your career, that's got to be one that definitely sits close to home and special for you.
Absolutely. We'll have, many people know Pete Frates, who started the Ice Bucket Challenge. He's from my hometown, Beverly, which is only 10 miles from here. We've worked with the Frates family. In fact, Andrew Frates, his brother, was just here at the tap room last week. So, we're close to the family. We're doing a lot of work to continue to support both ALS research, but also patient care for people who are afflicted.
That's awesome. That's beautiful to hear. So let's transition to this True North, your endeavor now. So you mentioned that your son was in the industry. You retired and said, hey, this business comes, let's do this business. But I want to talk about the first challenge you had with this business, and that was the name. So, based on your website, you were mentioning that there was a distillery in Michigan. There were some patent issues. So I'd love for you to walk us through how you found this name True North and the inspiration behind it, and then how you overcame all of the legality issues and the connections that you made to, of course, keep the name True North Ale Company.
Yeah, that was an early challenge. Jake came up with the name. He was looking for, a name that had some substance to it, some strength. And True North works for us for a variety of reasons. And you go right through it. The integrity of the business that we were looking to run, the true part. Obviously, we're in the north part of the country. We're on the North Shore of Boston. And then True North, which is, the reading on a compass. Ipswich, where we're located, very historic town here in Massachusetts, is a port, is a seafaring community. Very much all three of those reasons, it fit very well for us. So we put the name in to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, and it was rejected because there was a distillery in Michigan that had a line of vodkas that they called True North, and they felt it'd be confusion in the market if there was True North Ale Company and a Michigan distillery with True North vodka line. And we're thinking, what? You got to be kidding me. A fraternity brother of mine, a patent attorney, I told him the story, and he said, there's a way around that. If you and the other company, the distillery in Michigan, go together to the Patent and Trademark Office and say, we're okay with this. We don't believe that either of us will be hurt, and we don't think the consumer will either. Here are the reasons. They said the Patent and Trademark Office will likely go along with what you say. And we didn't know this distillery at all. However, another fraternity or brother of mine, who was our founding CFO here at True North Ales, another retired guy who was a banker in his real career. So I said to Rory, all right, Rory, you're from Michigan. Why don't you reach out to this guy from Michigan and see if you can, get some karma going and have him agree to do this with us. So Rory took it upon himself, contacted the guy, was out there in the summertime, went to his place, and he agreed. We got it done. No money changed hands. He was very magnanimous about it. He said, we'll support you on this. We went back to the trademark office and got the name. So that was, we were already looking at other names, and my son was adamant that we were going to get this done, and we did. So it was thanks to Rory and thanks to the folks out at the distillery, Grand Traverse Distillery.
You know, that's enough challenge to sort of just say, okay, like that's enough challenges for for a lifetime at a brewery, basically. But obviously, there's a lot more that goes into it, right? A couple of years ago, you mentioned your biggest challenges were finding a location. It was building a world-class team and physically building your space too, the brewery and the tap room. So, you know, we're now a couple of years after those comments here. Are you happy with the way everything went down? And, you know, how did you overcome some of those challenges to find the physical spot and to build that team up?
Yeah, you know, we went through, I think probably everybody has done this, going through the building process of it taking a lot longer. When we started out, I was counseled that you can count on it taking a lot longer and costing a lot more money than what you budgeted. And everybody was true on both facts. And taking that into account, I budgeted a lot more time and a lot more money, and then went beyond those things. So we eventually did get there. That was in 2017. Now, with COVID and what's been going on, you know, for the last few years, everybody was thrown more curveballs during that time. So I look back at what we had to go through in, you know, building up the place in 2016 and 17 compared to COVID, and that was actually pretty easy. So it's now on the other side of, you know, 2.5, 3 years of the COVID challenges that you know, we're starting to see some you know, some runway ahead again.
And to that point too, some of the challenges now, you know, as True North is established, and I'd argue one of the better known beer brands for Massachusetts, what do you foresee these next couple of years looking like as far as challenges growing and maintaining?
So the interesting thing with COVID, every little brewery, and when we put our business plan together, I think there were 48 breweries in Massachusetts. Now I think there are 248 breweries in Mass. So what happened with the proliferation of smaller startup breweries, COVID hit, and they had to survive. And nobody was coming to the tap room because the tap rooms were closed. So they started putting beer in cans. And we saw the mobile canning guys coming in, and suddenly you see on store shelves, competing for store shelf position, a whole bunch more breweries. Also at that time, the people who used to make pilgrimages up to Vermont to get some of the great Vermont beers, they weren't going across state lines, and the Vermont guys were dying. So suddenly we saw beers that you could only get at the brewery showing up on store shelves in Massachusetts, because you got to go where the people are. So the Vermont guys got distribution rights and started pushing their beers down onto store shelves in Mass. And in both cases, here we are 3 years later, it's continuing. So we have a lot more competition with more breweries coming in, and also more breweries putting beer on store shelves than certainly would have been the case without COVID. So that's a challenge that we're all facing, where there's only so many consumers out there who are drinking beer. You've got the other challenges that come from, you know, the fads that come up of hard seltzer and RTDs, and that also vies for consumer attention and for store shelf space. It's been an interesting ride for the last few years with all the changes that we've seen.
And what does your day-to-day look like, with your background? Obviously, you come from that sales and marketing leadership experiences. Is that some of the work that you do at True North? Like, what is your role with the company?
Yeah, so, I was the sales guy in the first year or two, and going out and making all the calls on the bar managers and the store managers. But currently we have a sales team. We've got 3 sales guys and a director of sales. We're in 3 states, so we're here in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island. So that team is out there humping it, working with our distributors in the 3 states to make things happen. So I get involved and help out on the sales side as I'm needed or as I can add value. Most of my day-to-day work is sort of thinking strategically. Where are we going to take this? Where are we going to go next? Our tap room, and I'm sitting here in our event space, and this event space, we've had weddings in here with 120 people sitting down to dinner with a dance floor. I mean, it's a big space, and we can do a lot with it, and we plan to do a lot more with it. The patios that we have, the tap room environment that we have, I think we need to replicate that somewhere else in the state. It will certainly help with brand building. It will help us certainly with what we're doing here. If we did it somewhere else, it would make our brand more recognizable wherever we open up a tap room. And I think that would help quite a bit. So the 1-2 punch of the distribution business, both on-prem and off-prem, as well as the tap room business, is how we're going to continue to work to expand. And the geography, we're not looking to be in 15 states. What we'd like to do is further penetrate the markets that we're in and become better known and more accepted in these markets, rather than just try to be an inch deep and a mile wide and go to all the way down the eastern seaboard or something.
Right. It makes sense, and it's a perfect transition to the product too. So what is on tap, right? We spent a lot of time talking about the business, but the actual product, when a consumer walks into True North as far as the tap room goes, or maybe they see it on the menu at Yard House in Linfield or something like that, what should a consumer expect from True North beer?
Well, I think what you're going to find is a broad, diverse offering. Seth Barnum, I mentioned earlier, our head brewer, he has brewing certificates from Siebel and Domans in Munich, Germany. He loves brewing German lagers. He's an amazing brewer of IPAs, the sours, fruited sours that he's been doing. So if you come in and you see that we've got 20 beers on tap, you're going to find several IPAs, both the hazy, juicy New England, as well as our new American IPA, straight up. You'll see multiple sours. We typically have 3 or 4 sours going. We've got multiple German lagers right now. We've got a year-round Helles. We've got a Doppelbock on right now. We've got a Pils on right now. So it's not like many places where you go in and you can, choose from the 10 IPAs that they've got and maybe a stout. We've got a diverse offering. And the reason we can do that, we invested in not only the production 30-barrel system, but a 5-barrel system that we'll typically do 10-barrel batches on that are mainly for the tap room. That allows people to come in and sample something that's different that they haven't tried before.
And your beer, it's safe to say it's award-winning. It is award-winning. You have clean sweeped in a bunch of different categories. The Belgian Blonder, you have the gold medal for the best craft beer awards, gold award in the World Beer Cup in 2018, gold medals for the North America Brewers Association competition in 19 and 22. A bunch of different, your Cerveza Mexican Lager is award-winning, the Northern Hazy Juicy IPA, the Wind Chilled Cold IPA. I'd love to see the trophy cabinet at True North Ale when we come up to Ipswich, because this is incredible. So is there a beer that you're most proud of with these awards?
Well, when we were 5 months old, we went to the World Beer to the Craft Brewers Conference down in Nashville, and we went to the awards ceremony. We weren't thinking anything of it. We had entered some beers, of course, but the chances of us winning anything were minuscule. We were 5 months old, and Vincian won gold. and we beat all the Belgians. I mean, the silver went to a brewery from the Netherlands. I mean, it's a legitimate world-class beer. And as you mentioned, it's won many other awards since then. But that just blew us away, absolutely blew us away. So when you come out, go to your first major competition and walk away with a gold, you're saying, holy shit, we may have something going here. And then after that, you mentioned Cerveza, our Mexican lager. It's actually the beer that's won the most awards for us, because it took a silver at the Great American Beer Fest, and then the next year it took a gold at the Beer Fest. I mean, they're only really, and I don't want to insult anybody, but the two competitions that really matter in the world of brewing are the World Beer Cup and the Great American Beer Fest. The others, Seth enters because he knows the judges are very good and capable. The feedback that he gets is going to be valuable to him, and being compared by those judges to, other beers that he knows are very, very good. And then beating them is what he wants to do. So we enter the other competitions, North American Brewers Association, Best of Craft Beer Awards, and that's about it. Those are the four that we do. The first two, that's all about prestige, and the second two, it's really about learning.
And is there a beer that surprised you the most of, you entered into some competitions or got some feedback from, consumers that you were like, yeah, this is going to be a solid beer, but it turned out to be a fan favorite?
Well, I can't say that it's Northern Haze. That's our flagship IPA, because that came out and just took off. I mean, it really hit. That's the one that took bronze at the Great American Beer Fest. Probably the thing that struck us was the winning for our cucumber key lime sour that we put into competition 2 summers ago. And, the sour categories are pretty tough. There are some specialists, some brewers that specialize in those sours. And, Seth wanted to just see how it would do and get some feedback, and it medaled. So, since then, our sour program has really taken off. And we've got dedicated tap lines at many restaurants in the region now that just rotate our sours, and we bring out new sours every couple of months. So the one that we just packaged this morning was a strawberry rhubarb sour. So creative things, fun things, and a bit of a different drinking audience than the typical IPAs.
And as far as the favorite beers, right? There's some fan favorites. There's obviously the ones that you're most proud of in the awards and stuff. But is there a beer that amongst your family is the favorite, right? Like, inside the founding group, is there something that, you all collectively know, like, hey, that's a really good beer. We're going to reach for that.
I'd have to say it's our Munich Helles. Seth makes amazing German beers. My wife and I were over at Oktoberfest 2 years ago, and I would drink a Fest beer, a liter of Fest beer, and it's a little bit maltier, a little bit heavier, and then the next one I'd have a Helles, and then I'd have another Helles. And I found that the Helles is just so clean and drinkable. Seth started doing the Helles, I think it was in our first or toward the end of our first year that he did our Helles, and it's now a year-round offering. And it's got a great name that the guys in production, came up with back, several years ago. It's called Holy Schnitt. And so, if you know what a Schnitt is, if you go to a beer hall in Germany, it's the end of the night. You don't really want another full beer. You go to the bartender and say, just give me a Schnitt. He'll give you, a half pour, charge you accordingly. And so, it's a pun, but it also works.
Love that. And in all of your travels to Europe, the multiple times throughout your life, was there any breweries or, beer brands that really stuck out to you that made you admire those, Eastern European style beers?
Well, we talked about Vinciana, our Belgian blonde, Vincian the name came from a real person, a friend of ours, whose name Vincian. We met when we were living in Europe, and my son Jake and his brother Grant were in grade school. Vincian was the mom of three of the other students, and she's Belgian and blonde. And she became a very good friend. And so when we named our Belgian blonde, it was easy. We're going to call it Vincian. We went over, Jill and I did, to visit with Vincian and Guy, and spent a week pretty much going from brewery to brewery. And I'll tell you, there are some amazing breweries in Belgium. The one that struck me the most was in Bruges, and many of you in the audience probably have heard the story about the brewery that's in the downtown section of historic Bruges, but they were big enough that they had to build another facility outside the town, and they put a pipeline under the town, under people's homes, so that they could transport beer to the fermenters for packaging outside the city. And if it went under your home, you got a kit essentially for a beer a day for the rest of your life, because they had to, come under your property and put the pipeline through. So people could walk over to the brewery and have a beer. So that kind of thing impresses the heck out of me.
I mean, not bad. I guess True North should start making some pipelines, and we buy steak up in Ipswich, right? Get a beer a day for the rest of our lives. That would be a pretty sweet gig.
It'd be worth it.
Yeah. So, are there any other beers that in your whole Rolodex over the past couple of years that you thought were going to be successful and weren't? Or are there any beers that you haven't made yet and you would like to, add that to your portfolio?
Well, you mentioned Windchill taking an award very recently. That is a cold IPA. That was done the first time. We were the first brewery in Massachusetts ever to do a cold IPA back 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. And it just, it's uses lager yeast, but it's an IPA. And I'd say, well, why isn't it an IPL? And, that it's a marketing thing as far as I'm concerned. And you are fermenting at the higher range of the lager yeast for this cold IPA. But to me, it's still an IPL. But I would say that I don't know of a beer that didn't hit. I would say the IPL is one that surprised me in that it did hit as well as it did. And, because we did now I can't remember the style of IPA that was done back about 3.5 years ago. And we did one of those, and it just didn't really take off. And I'm losing it right now. Maybe you guys can help me. It was brewed IPA. Remember that? So it came out of a guy in California who invented it, but it just didn't take off. And it was supposed to be the next big thing after the New England style IPA, and we did one, and it was nice, and other people did it, and then it sort of faded. So we'll see if this cold IPA has any legs to it. But that was one style that had high hopes. A lot of the pundits were saying it was going to be a big deal, but never really took off.
So one thing's for sure has come up a bunch in this interview already, and True North is a family business, right? It's, there's clear backbones of family here. So that being said, what's been the most rewarding part for you having this be a family sort of owned and operated business? And to that point, what's been the hardest part of working with family?
Well, the rewarding part is right from the start is being impressed with what your son does. I never worked with him before. He was my son. We get into the business. He and Seth went right to work on designing, what the layout was going to be for the equipment before we bought it, why it was going to be done that way, thinking through that, doing all of the work. He did a lot of the work, overseeing the project. I said, holy shit, this kid knows what he's doing. And it was impressive. And I'd say right from the start, that's something that since, all I did was homebrew, what did I know? I could drink a beer. But, he and Seth got together and really got things going during 2017 and got us in business at the end of 2017. And, we haven't looked back. My wife had, did not want to be a part of this. That's, you and Jake, that's your thing. And that didn't last long. She got sucked in. She saw how much fun we were having. And now she is also working here full time. She does all of our merchandise, helps out with tap room, does a lot of the marketing stuff. And, so every day the three of us are working together. And then the extended family, I had mentioned my fraternity brother, our founding CFO, was with us for 5 years before he retired again and unfortunately passed away. But a big part of the family, Seth, Jake's known him. I've known him for a bunch of years before we started this. Right there, it's an important thing to be working with people who you really respect and doing it on a daily basis. So that's the rewarding part. The challenging part, every once in a while, better not say it because my wife will be all over me. But every once in a while you disagree, and if it was a different business, I could just overrule people. But can't do that as well here when you've got 40 years of marriage on you.
That seems like a minor point, right?
Comes back to the dinner table and you're like, this is should have left it in the tap room, right?
There you go.
So we talked about your career in True North. Let's get to some of your personal life. So you're a big outdoors guy. I want to rank your favorite activities. So you got biking, hiking, skiing, motorcycle, fishing, and bird hunting. So what is the power ranking in the Gary Rogers world of your outdoor passions?
It's the thing is that there's not a lot of overlap in some of those things as far as time of year. You can only hunt, for example, in the fall. The best time for hiking and mountain biking is when there's not snow on the ground. Best time for skiing is when there's snow on the ground. But I would say that the thing that I've really enjoyed the most and didn't really take it up in any serious way until after I stopped running. I ran a couple of marathons and I ran lots of road races. But when I was giving up on the distance running, I got into cycling. And it is just so much fun. And we've been all over the world doing cycling trips in Germany, in Spain, in Tasmania. It's just a great way to see the various countries and get some exercise and have some fun. So I'd say that's probably right there on the top. But then again, going out to see my son, Grant, in Jackson Hole, where he's been living for the last 11 years, we just did that in March. Wow. You can't beat that when you're doing it.
It's one of those, it's like hard to get on the plane to come back after that. It's like, oh man, I could just stay here for a bit. I'm not even a skier and I can appreciate that,
Just the beauty of the area, the challenge of the terrain, being with your son and your wife, and just can't be beat.
Are you new to motorcycling or have you always been like a biker?
I had a motorcycle when I was in high school, and then I didn't for many years. But as I was getting, into the retirement time, I bought a bike. My brother-in-law, who I mentioned earlier, had a similar bike, and we've done some amazing adventures. We've motorcycled to the Copper Canyon in Mexico. We've gone up to the Yukon. We had to fly and then rent bikes in New Zealand. So I really enjoy getting out in a motorcycle.
You've hit all the boxes. That's pretty awesome. And then, of course, being a North Shore guy, you live and die Boston sports. So obviously this is a pretty perfect timing. You got the Celtics and Bees right now in the playoffs. It's championship or bust for both teams in your eyes, right?
It has to be. And, this is an odd week for me. I went to the Bruins game Monday night. I went to the Red Sox game Wednesday night. I'm tired just by going to these games. I'm not playing them, but the Bruins look great. And then I didn't see them look bad because I was at the Sox game. Celtics and Bruins both tonight. After the seasons that they both had, especially the Bruins, it would be a big disappointment if they didn't go run the table on this thing. But I tell you, 82 games of fun with the Bruins this year. It's just so much fun to participate in that as a spectator and see what these guys are doing. Yeah, I'm a big time Boston fan.
I think the Bruins needed to get punched in the face the other night, though. They just needed that. That was the worst game I've ever seen of any sport. That was bad.
They did get punched in the face, and I think they realized it. We'll see what happens tonight.
I hope so.
Florida is it's hockey. It's one of those things where the Bruins, yes, incredible season, but it's a 7-game slate, and it can go either way. But you mentioned the Red Sox as well. We're Yankee fans. Sorry.
Cards on the table. Yeah.
Cards on the table. We're not going to insult anybody or make fun of anybody, and it's still early on. But what do the Red Sox need for you to at least consider it a successful season?
It's not going to be a successful season.
That was what we were hoping you'd say, but so thank you.
There's just a lack of talent and depth. I went with a buddy of mine on Wednesday, and he's a big baseball guy, and we were, talking about what the potential is. And I said, well, hey, don't forget, when they changed. Remember Morgan Magic when Joe Morgan took over the team and after the All-Star break and took them to the World Series. That ain't going to happen. It's not. They're not going to change managers because they've got a good one. What they need to do is get some talent.
Hey, I liked Adam Duvall. He was off to a great start, and then he's going to be out for the next couple months, which really sucks. That was some big wind out of their sail.
Yeah, and as I say, no depth behind them. They had to move their shortstop to play center field. But then again, that shortstop made an error a game up until that point. So I mean, they're just not very good.
Yeah,
but I'm not going to become a Yankees fan, though. I won't.
That's fine.
We weren't going to ask you to. We knew that was off the table. But all right, here's the kicker now. So this is where we branch off. Will's a Giants fan. I'm half good. I'm a Patriots fan, though, too. So realistic expectations from New England this year as well. I'm optimistic. I don't know about you. Do you share those same feelings as I do?
Nah.
No?
I don't know what's going on there, but it just doesn't seem to be happening. They're not. I don't know what it is. It's not just the quarterback either. I mean,
no, it's not just his fault.
The quarterback that they have, I don't think is the answer, but that's not the reason that they're not at the level.
Right, he's also not the problem. I can get around that.
It's not the total problem. There's more to it, but I'm less of a Patriots fan or a football fan than I am the other sports. If I ranked them 1, 2, 3, 4, it would be Bruins first. We used to always be the Red Sox. It used to always be the Celtics. But I was a Celtics fan when, Bill Russell was playing, and I'd go to games and see him play against Chamberlain. And, it was absolutely wild in the old Garden. Today's game is very different. It's fun to watch, but it's just move the ball as fast as you can until you can get a 3. And it's a different style. They're not driving the paint. They're not doing it's a different game. So hockey, on the other hand, it's just so much better than it used to be. It's there's no pull and tug and interfering all the time. They're actually skating, and it's just a wide open game. So that's a lot of fun.
It's a beautiful game. This is the first year that I've really followed it. Will's been following for a long time, and it's just there's few things better than just some of the most athletic guys on the earth on ice just beating the crap out of each other.
Yeah. It's amazing what they can do on skates.
Yeah, we just need the broadcasting world and the media world to elevate it a little bit more. Because it's like, even with like ESPN, and this is like a whole podcast on its own. It's like they post what they want, and it's like you got to be following the whole season. And it's hard to keep up when, you're getting football highlights 24/7, but I guess that's the distribution of equity and money and all of that stuff.
You know what's been interesting to me is to see when a town that you'd never think hockey would be popular, and they get a hockey franchise like Nashville, and suddenly everybody's a Predators fan and they love the game. And it's I think that the NHL is doing a good thing and opening in places like Charlotte and Nashville and Florida. I mean, Florida was always the transplants from the north, but these other places doing pretty well. Arizona, I think, is building a new barn, but the one they're in is like a high school thing. But that's taken off there too. So
what's so odd is that like they're playing at ASU's brand new stadium, and they can only hold 5,000 people. So they've got the broadcasters basically on ice level, but they sell the thing out when they're playing the Bruins, for example, months ago, and the Bruins come back and say that was the best ice I've ever played on in my life.
Oh, is that right?
Because it was just so new and fresh and stuff. I'm like, what? Something doesn't add up here. That's crazy.
Yeah. They don't care if there are 5,000 fans or 15,000 fans. It's they're doing what they're doing on the ice.
Yeah, they just want to go play and beat the crap out of somebody. But yeah, we'll see what happens in the playoffs. Should be real fun. To start closing out here, what's the biggest takeaway from True North? Right, like if somebody asks, what's True North? What's your biggest takeaway for them?
So there are two ways of looking at it. There's beer out in the market and how we're perceived out there. And people should know that if they buy one of our beers, it's going to be phenomenal. Our tagline is award-winning beer. That's how we're promoting ourselves. We've won more awards than any brewery in Massachusetts. Thinking about the Great American Beer Fest and World Beer Cup, we're only behind Allagash in all of New England. So for a 5-year-old brewery, over the last 5 years, Seth's making great beer. So I would say that people should be confident that they're going to get a great beer when they choose one of ours. Here at the tap room, it's all about building community. And that's the interesting part about having a brewery, is that it attracts people, and whether it's a fundraiser, it's an ALS fundraiser or something else, it's people who are running the Boston Marathon who hold their fundraisers here. It attracts people, and then we're able to use that bully pulpit to do good. So you can do it on that level, and it's just people walking in, and it's all set up like a beer hall. So you're going to be sitting next to people who maybe you don't know, but then you get to know them, and I think that's important too. So great beer and a real focus on building community.
And words of wisdom section of someone like yourself, where you've had many hats in corporate America, you've retired, you're now in the family business and in the craft beer business. What advice do you have someone who might be following a similar journey path that you had, or someone who is looking to make a career switch and start something completely new? What advice would you give to them?
I would say, think about scale and what kind of a business you want to have. Do you want to have, a taproom business, or is it more of a distribution business? Because the distribution side of the business is very challenging. The margins suck. It's it's just a different model than the taproom side of the business. So that would be the piece of advice that I'd have, is think about the scale that you want to be at, and what's most important to you. Is it being in 10 states, or is it doing that community building that I mentioned earlier on a smaller scale, but maybe a more meaningful scale?
And as far as what's next, I know we touched upon it a little bit, but anything you want to plug? Any things coming up with the spring that you'd like to highlight, or maybe the summer, or just some general plans on what's next for this year, and then maybe in years future for True North?
Well, I'll tell you, near term, we just introduced a new beer a few weeks ago, It's a new year-round, core offering. And the reason that we brought this out, it's called Straight Up IPA, and it's a straight up IPA. It's, it doesn't have fruits or juices or anything, but it's an American IPA, clear, not hazy. It's got a tremendous hops, tropical fruit nose to it and flavors. But people were coming in and they're saying, I've liked these, hazy, juicy IPAs, but they were looking for something that was a little cleaner, a little more drinkable, not as big a meal for, drinking that big hazy, juicy. And so Seth worked on it hard, end of last year, beginning of this year, multiple test batches that he brought out that he kept tweaking. We got a lot of feedback from people. We put it into a couple of restaurants to get feedback away from the tap room. And he kept refining it over 4 or 5 test batches to get to where we launched just the 1st of April. And it really has taken off for us. It's doing really well. You can get it at Trader Joe's. You can get it at other places. Places have grabbed onto it. So that's something that we're going, now we're 3 weeks into it. We're working hard to promote it and to make it really successful. And it's right there with Northern Haze, our hazy juicy, and so people have those 2 alternatives. As we go into the summer, it's sour season, it's cerveza, Mexican lager. Those beers just take off in the summertime for us. So not only here, but obviously out in the market. So that's happening. And I mentioned earlier about strategically looking forward and starting to do some work on, hey, should we be looking at another location for, building tap room, building community, doing all the things that we do here somewhere else, because it also helps with brand building. So, I think we've got a lot on our plate. It's going to be fun.
A lot of good stuff moving forward. And Gary, we appreciate the time. So where can our listeners visit your location, find your beer, and of course, follow along your journey online?
Super. Where we are is in the 3 states I mentioned. Massachusetts, we're throughout the state, and we're in stores. I mentioned Trader Joe's, Whole Food. We're in Costco, but we're in a lot of the independent stores that do such a good job of promoting our beer. Same thing with New Hampshire. Rhode Island, we're really just getting going with Rhode Island. We're in, or have been in 13 or 1,400 bars and restaurants. Of course, you get rotated a lot, but you can find our beer on tap. You can try something. Once people try the liquid, then when they go into the store, they know what they're looking for, and that helps us a lot with our on-premise and off-premise strategy for sales. So that's where we're found, and then of course everyone's at www.truenorthales.com.
Love it. Gary Rogers, thank you so much for coming on. We're looking forward to having a couple True North pints sometime soon.
Come up and see us. Not that far.
Absolutely. We'll be there. So thank you again, and good luck with everything.
All right. Hey, thank you guys.